Welcome to the One for the Road podcast. My name is Mr. K. Alongside me, as usual, is C Squared. Tonight's topic, we thought we'd march down the Trump cabinet and give our impressions of some of the Trump administration's cabinet appointees and their performance, some of the good, some of the bad, just accomplishments, if any. As we'll get into some of these. We're starting to wonder what they're doing, lack of movement. So let's start out with, I thought we'd start out with Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. Now, I'll bring this up. I don't know if C Squared has any comments about this, but the first time I saw Rubio, he's sitting in the White House during the Zelensky visit and just looking really mad because it appears that I think he might have had a deal with Zelensky, and Vance and Trump are just destroying what any agreement he might have had with Zelensky, and it might have even been in ending the war with Russia or maybe
Right.
some
Or the
concession.
or the mineral deal or
Right,
whatever. But what I
right,
will
and it looks like
say
the mineral
is
deal went through.
that that dude's a crook. And so
Zelensky.
yeah. And so the bottom line is that uh I can't believe part of the deal is that you don't go to some other that you don't resign and go to some other country to start with, man. And I did read something, so we're not sure. This is unverified. We're not sure if this is true, but basically said that mineral deal included us providing the financial end of things to provide Ukraine with support in exchange for the mineral deal and the rebuilding of Ukraine. If the American taxpayer is on the hook for that, my head is going to explode. And
Mine will too,
so,
given the former administration and regime was handing out money like candy to these guys to the tune of we're double any other country in the amount of money we've given Zelensky.
right, and in order to get these minerals, who obviously are going to be mined by private companies. If you were talking about rebuilding Ukraine, that construction work is going to be done by private companies. If it is in fact true at all that the American taxpayer is on the hook for any of this financially, this is the definition of what fascism is. It is putting
Right.
the taxpayer on the hook to give money to government favorite companies. So I'm going to be that. If that is what MAGA is all about, I'm a little bent out of shape. And
Yeah, I've been out of
so,
shape too. My impression is the money is from the last administration. Now we're going to take that money we gave you, the last administration gave you, and you're
yep,
using that for whatever. And by the way, we're to get some of our money back, which we gave you, you're going to give us minerals.
right. If that isn't the deal, then I'm going to be highly upset.
Oh, totally agree. And I'm going to be irate too. And again, let's stop the madness of giving this ex TV star in Ukraine money.
Right.
That was the last administration.
Yeah.
There's a new
Right.
sheriff in town.
Well, and so do you want to go into do a brief one on what the DoD is doing currently? I'll preface that, John, by saying if we're on the hook for paying for the rebuilding of Ukraine for in exchange for a minerals deal. Another report that came out basically said that everything that was saved by USAID and Elon's team has now not been saved. It has been reallocated to the DoD. And so, if that is the case, then this again looks like some fascist play where we're not actually saving anything. We're not actually cutting our budget. We're just reallocating it to a different group of crooks that are my favorite crooks, opposed to
Yes.
somebody else's
Yes.
favorite crooks. Man,
Yes.
this
Yes.
is ridiculous. That is not.
Right.
If any of these rumors are true, it's just beyond belief. And
Right. And horribly disappointing given the platform Mr. Trump was on when he was campaigning.
right,
I mean, like I said, I mean, in the beginning, it seemed like, why is he doing this? Is like, because this is what the American public wanted. We wanted Doge. We wanted
you
a
got it.
leaner, thinner government. We
Right,
wanted, the U.S. aid, which was just this horribly corrupt entity, out of business.
right. No, no, exactly. And that was great until we found out that you're just
Right.
gonna, divert that to somebody else. Because one of the biggest problems the government has is, which was illustrated by USAID, is the fact that we are uh, accruing an absurd amount of debt, and that money
Yeah.
is being distributed to, in the USAID category, anything from NGOs and foundations and universities and media outlets and whatever else in there. Is being distributed to them, which is basically fascism, right? The government is on the hook to support their favorite private industry. If you shut down USAID and find a bunch of other government contracts to actually
Yeah.
disperse the same amount of money, it's the same fascism with a different group. That's
Right.
not MAGA. That, well, maybe it is mega. If that's the case, I'm not on board. The whole
Right.
idea was, how do I shrink the government 90%? And
Yeah. Yeah. It
and
does
the
seem.
answer to that is that it is that I'm not giving all these. I'm shutting down these operations. I'm not writing a 10 million new contracts with independent companies to do this work. The contracts don't exist, the work doesn't exist, we don't need it, and I don't want it, and I'm not paying for it. How's that,
Right.
man?
Right. Right. We'll come back to the Department of Defense because we're
Yeah,
going to talk
okay.
about the head of the Department of Defense.
Well, and
Uh,
this can just be random discussions, folks, because I want to keep, from an issues perspective, this moving in a way that is relevant to one issue that leads right into the other issue,
right. Right.
and which seemed relevant from Ukraine,
Oh,
USAID,
yeah.
the
Yes.
Defense
Yes.
Department, and where this money trail
Right.
is going. So
Right. Right.
that's where
Yep.
we're
Yep.
heading
We're
here.
all good. So Rubio lately has been reviewing the visa statuses of Columbia and some other colleges. There was a disturbance on Columbia's University. 80 anti-Palestinian protesters were trying to take over the library where students were taking their final exams. Rubio is in charge of reviewing the visa statuses of those people. By the way, under Rubio, more than 1,800 students have lost their visa statuses
So
due to the administration's crackdown of immigration. Go ahead, C squared.
So and I think we should go into other aspects of immigration too. But I'm so glad you brought that up, John,
Well,
because I want to talk about that. If you are here on a visa and you want to write an op-ed piece that says, I dislike X, I dislike Y, if you want to get a permit and stand in front of the university and peacefully protest, you should not be deported. You know who
Right.
needs to be deported, and this will eventually be deleted? People that are criminals. The
Yes.
top of the
Yes.
list, people that are criminals. If you are arrested for trying to take
Yes.
over a library or
Yes.
set something on fire or vandalize a
Or
car
worse.
or do anything like that, you are now a criminal and
Yes.
and your visa should be gone and you should be deported. If you are writing an op-ed piece the in a newspaper, the college newspaper or whatever, that's what the U.S. was founded on.
Right.
It's called
Right.
freedom of
Right.
speech. You
Right.
should not lose your visa for expressing your opinion because there is no right or wrong opinion, such as an op-ed piece. That's what the United States and the government should be all about. There is
Right.
no right or wrong opinion. The essentially I'm allowed to say anything I want as long as it isn't slander or
Right. 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 Exactly.
inciting some type of immediate emergency situation, i.e.,
Right.
yelling fire in a theater. You know,
Right. Right.
so
Right.
the
Right.
bottom line is, other than that, that's what America's founded on. So all the people with these visas, feel free to write op-ed pieces because
Right.
despite the fact that I lean towards the libertarian side of the house, the bottom line is you should absolutely be able to express your opinion. If you
Right.
commit a crime, you're a
Right.
criminal. You're
Right.
going you should expect to either be in jail or get deported. And
Right. And
so
the
there's
two things that come up in my mind during your comments is there's degrees of criminality. I mean, there's murder and then there's jaywalking.
right. Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
difference. They're both crimes. That's about the only similarity, folks. I mean, there's a degrees of criminality. The other thing is sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me.
Right,
And
exactly. And
sticks and
it's
stones
really
and violence and crime and vandalism,
right.
and you're actually committing a crime. Yeah, goodbye. It's nice.
Right. And that
Thanks for
leads
playing.
into a little bit the story of the woman and her two American children being deported. I don't have the full details on that, but it seems quite odd that you would have like 19 or 20,000 gang members running around this country and that you would go after some woman and her two American born kids. Maybe it was a clerical error. Maybe it was
Right.
a vendetta from a field office. Who knows? But again, don't you have anything better to do?
Right.
They have like
Right.
58 things on fire right now,
Yes.
and you're stomping out a match on the ground, and it's
Yes.
like
Yes. Exactly.
what is the point of this? So that amounts to stay focused to getting rid of the criminal problem in this country with deportations. And
Yeah. Yeah.
let's go to the top of the list of deep people that most Americans want deported. Criminals, people who
Right.
are
Right.
here illegal, and you could say, well, everybody's here illegally, and they're all criminals. Okay, I agree with that. They've all broken the law. To John's point, the degree of breaking the law.
Right.
Let's put out the forest fires before we start
Right.
stepping on matches, right? And
Exactly.
so you have a bazillion forest fires burning. I want all the forest fires put out, and then you can go around and step on matches. And
Right.
the
Right.
bottom line
Right.
is, why don't we stay focused here on achieving the most value because we have a limited time frame here, folks.
Yes, yes.
And we need to use that wisely. And wisely is all hands on deck, all
Right,
available resources are searching for felony criminals to
right,
get rid of out of this country.
right, right. So I totally agree. And, I'm thinking priorities, folks. There's priorities. I mean, there's huge priorities. We
Yep.
don't have enough manpower in this government to go after even the top 60 priorities. So
Right.
let's focus on like the top 60 priorities. Deporting this one woman has got to be like 8,000 on that list. Come on. You can't win every battle. Don't It's ridiculous trying to win every battle. I am right about everything. Let's just give that up.
Yeah,
Like you said,
it's the
this match on the ground is nothing compared to the forest fire that's engulfing California like
right.
issue.
Chicago, all these different
Right.
places like that that are a complete and utter train wreck. New York, all these places like that that are a complete and utter train wreck and out of control. You should send squads of FBI people into there to do essentially get as many of the criminals as you possibly can out of here. And,
Right.
it's in criminal gangs and stuff of that nature. It's the 80-20 rule. Let's
Oh yeah,
get
yeah,
the
yeah.
80%
Yes.
and the 20% will is
It
cleanup
is what it
work.
is.
Is cleanup
Yeah.
work, man.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Exactly.
I just thought I'd lead in from there
Oh
because
yeah, yeah.
it is
That's good.
again somebody writing an op-ed piece in a newspaper, opposed to if you are truly trying to take over a piece of the campus, that's 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 a fairly major crime. You deserve to be imported if they're deported. If you
Deported.
are that dumb that you're
Right.
trying to take over a building, that's ridiculous. But still, let's focus on the gang members that
Yes.
are running, that are actually doing, hits for hire,
Right.
because
Right.
that's even way worse than taking over the library on a college
Yeah.
campus.
I do think the administration is every illegal alien is a criminal. They're all going, I don't care the situation. To your point, and it seemed like the focus in the first couple of months was criminals only. It's criminals only. If you're here
Hardcore criminal.
illegally and you're not a criminal, you're good. But now it's like I think their reasoning is we've tackled the criminal problem. Now we're going to go after everybody who's an illegal alien, and it's whatever.
Well,
I'm with
and
you.
so here is the problem with exactly with what you just said, John. They have not tackled the criminal problem. They
Right,
haven't put
exactly.
a dent in it. So
Right,
that is, I think, the core point is you haven't even put a dent in the real problem that people elected you and care
right,
about, man.
right,
I want to see gang members with tattoos all over them being deported in mass. I want to see the statistics on crime rates in these cities
right,
going down.
right,
And if
right,
you have
right,
not produced that, you are nowhere close to the cleanup stage.
right,
So
right,
get to work.
right. And I think what we're seeing now, and this is a theme, is the Trump administration started out pretty hot and pretty good and had a good list of priorities. And lately, it seems like it's fallen off the wheels a bit, and there's some really peculiar priorities, and we're going to get to some of them in this. I was going to talk about Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence. Uh, I haven't really seen much from her. One thing is, let's bring it up, the Signal debacle, where one of these people let a member of the press into a chat room, and they were talking about bombing Yemen and all sorts of battle plans in this chat room. Tulsi happened to be one of the participants.
Those two people were fired.
Yes.
But you guys use Signal. You use something that exposes phone numbers and your address book to any first year computer science dude knows that you would never use any of those pieces that do direct related conversations, because it is wide open security wise, man. How could you be that literally that stupid is what I look at. When I heard that, I was blown away that there are a couple of different apps like Signal, WhatsApp, I'm trying to think of Telegram, a bunch of things. Once you log into those, you are forced to expose your phone number and what eventually becomes your address book. What a security debacle that is, man.
Right.
You guys don't have your own private app, app. Give me a holler. I'll build you one with SSL in it, man.
Well, okay, so you'll love this. Gabbard had answers to all of your observations. So she claims Signal is fully encrypted and has been endorsed by the last administration and this administration as the most secure app to use during these online conversations. The other thing she said, which is, and she was brought to task on, was like, why are these conversations happening online, period? These should be happening under closed doors. I mean, right. Before the internet, all these conversations happen behind closed doors in super secure rooms.
So, and ironically enough, you could easily open a peer-to-peer application like peer-to-peer Miro Talk, who we want to thank for providing us with this chat. That is a peer-to-peer connection, and then who all the peers are in the room. Nobody's number was exposed because it is a peer-to-peer tunnel over the internet, and it is obviously encrypted in the same standard as passing your credit card information. So, why wouldn't you use just a free website to actually provide this type of service? And by the way, you could see everybody on the call.
Yeah. So, of course, her claim was the Biden administration used it the last year of his regime frequently. Nothing ever happened there. But the big mistake, folks, is you let someone into the press. She claims it's super secure, encrypted.
Nothing ever happened there. Maybe the Biden administration used it because Xi Jinping had his U.S. number logged into that stuff, and he loved to just listen in on Saturday night for amusement because he has nothing better to do. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll go into it later. Some other reactions to the Signal debacle from other cabinet officials. Let me think. So interesting parallel involving Tulsi Gabbard. The new sensational movie by Marvel has come out, Thunderbolts, this weekend. In it, Julia Louis-Dreyfus plays a character, Valencia Allegro de Fontaine. She is the head of the CIA. She looks exactly like Tulsi Gabbard in this movie. Tulsi Gabbard happens to be director of national intelligence. Lots of parallels there. Little bit of a spoiler. I'll just say that Julia Louise Dreyfus's character is not exactly heroic in this movie, downright villainous, and
And
wields a lot of power.
well, and ironically enough, leave it to our friends in Hollywood to paint somebody in a negative light that they potentially don't like. So I you
Right.
could have saw that script a coming.
So there's a lot of things at play. One is this character, Alencia Allegra de Fontaine, was created in 1967. If you go back to those 67 comic books, she has strands of white hair running through her hair, just like she does in the movie, and just happens to be just like Tulsi. So this is a 1967 character. They haven't done much to alter her appearance at all from the 67 comic books to the 2025 movie. So that's at play. The other thing at play is, Thunderbolts was probably in production in 2023 before Tulsi was ever elected. So that's going on too that people aren't thinking about. But I'm telling you, as a moviegoer and even somebody going in, it's like, oh my God, it's like that looks like Tulsi Gabbard and the head of the CIA.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So it
It
is
could be
interesting, but
coincidence. There are
it's
stranger
coincidence.
coincidences that have happened.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah.
It's just coincidence, folks. And like I said, it's based off a 1967 character. And they didn't really alter her appearance at all. We're going to move on to RFK Jr. He's the Secretary of Health and Human Services. He's been known as an anti-vaxxer and now is kind of overseeing vaccinations. There's been a measles outbreak in Texas, albeit seems pretty small. Let's hopefully it'll stay small. He's on an agenda of make American healthy again. C squared, you might know some other stuff. You want to jump in here?
So I believe there's some stuff that came out about not putting fluoride in the water. He's
Right.
obviously in his past been very against vaccinations, which is fabulous. You know what? Out of anybody in the administration, RFK Jr. has produced more measurable things other than we'll get to the Don and the anti-war thing because that is very positive. But RFK Jr. has produced more measurable results than almost anybody else in the administration in
Yes.
the short period of time. So hats off to RFK Jr. I would like to see make America healthy again too, and I
Yes.
think he's
Yes.
going down that path currently. And we'll see where this goes. But and has actually produced some things in the first 90 to 120 days that are show that he means what he says and
Yeah.
he's trying to actually do things and get them implemented. So hats off to him. Great job.
Right. Right. The other thing too, they said, I saw this interview where he's like aligning himself with three other government agencies and they're all going to work together. And even like some of the former heads of Health and Human Services are like, yeah, that never happened during my regime. That should have happened. So that's a great thing is, to align yourself with other similar government organizations and come together on a coalition on common objectives.
Right. And at least be able to keep an eye on the what is the overall policy and is everybody in these organizations subscribed to that
Right.
policy.
Right.
is because you seem to have agencies doing disparate activities like gain of function research in the past, which were technically barred by law by the United States, but some, you know, small group inside of some small agency were able to get away with this. And so I would very much like a unified policy that is been legislated.
Right.
And then if
Right.
the legislators do something stupid like mandate any of this type stuff, then it is, your time to use your right to protest against them and send them letters and essentially say that we are very unhappy and will not comply,
Right.
which
Right.
is different than taking over a library. Saying
Right.
I will
Right.
not comply is much different. Maybe
Yes.
breaking the law, but it is much different of saying um, you must come. I am not complying, and you must come to me, which makes you the aggressor.
Right, right, right. Exactly. Okay, we'll go back to Department of Defense. That's headed by Pete Hegseth. I don't know. This dude had some issues. He's the mastermind of the Signal debacle. He was fighting against this. He called the writer who sneaked into the room like horrible things, like he's an unqualified journalist and stuff like that. He's been trying to axe generals. His latest crusade is he's trying to get rid of 1,000 transgender military people. Come forward now and you can be released. And we're going after the people who don't come forward. The military's 1.3 million. And again, talk about priorities and stamping a match here, C squared. 1,000 out of 1.3 million active military members. He's going
Right.
after
And
1,000. That's less than 1%.
right.
And why? What
So,
is the end game? What is the priority? I'll have you weigh in.
well, I will comment real quick, just on a higher level of I'm all good with him getting rid of a bunch of generals. Man, if they're totally incompetent, they should be out
Oh
of
yeah, yeah,
man
yeah. Right,
in that
right,
aspect. And how many generals are there? And so if you're talking about getting rid of 1,000 generals, I'm all about getting rid of 1,000 generals if that's the case. If you have 2,000 generals and 1,000 of them are incompetent and have shown their incompetence, okay, bye. You need
right,
to go, but it needs to be based on their competency in what they are doing.
right. And
Now
track history.
dropping down to the next level of 1,000, I am trying to get rid of 1,000 people in an army of 1.3 million. I am totally on board with where you're at, John. And this goes back to the 80-20 rule and the stamping out matches while Rome burns, stamping out
Right,
matches on the ground while Rome burns. Don't you have anything better to do, dude?
right,
Realistically, why don't you figure out? So the DoD, to my knowledge, has not passed an audit in a decade or
right,
decades. I actually don't know
right,
the full
right,
details. Why don't we focus? Why don't you get rid of
right.
some of those generals who can't answer where the money went to?
Yeah,
And why don't you
right,
conduct an audit? Here's how I would determine how I'm going to get rid of some of the generals. I would conduct a snap audit there, Pete,
right,
and
right,
anybody who cannot make their budget balance on a spreadsheet is immediately
Right.
fired. How about
Right.
that?
Right.
You
And
know?
that would fall in line with what Doge is doing.
Right, exactly. This really isn't that hard. It's
Right.
pretty simplistic as to how you figure out how to get rid of the bigger problem, which is I we have no idea where $22 trillion has gone
Yeah. I
over the
mean,
last
I would
over
make
the
that
last
priority
15
one, not
years.
getting rid of a
The
thousand
bottom line
soldiers.
is that there's ways to figure that out, and why are you not working on the
Right.
ways to figure that out, opposed to doing media sound bites on total foolishness?
Right.
Who cares?
Right.
And
Right. Right. And I'll just go back really. So the thing so he claims he's taking these marching orders. He's a former soldier. I'm taking marching orders from Trump. Trump told me this is my top priority. I was like, okay, I don't get it. I don't get it. This is a purge of active military people. These people are like flying fighter jets, and they're competent. And I just don't get it. If you have a pulse and you want to fight for this nation, and you pass the physical, here's your gun. I don't care your background or anything. If you want to fight for this country, you can pass a physical, and you got a pulse. Here's your gun.
yeah,
Get in
yeah,
there.
yeah,
And the
yeah, yeah,
focus on that, and to your point, the focus on that as opposed to you've never passed an audit, it seems is ridiculous. And some of these contracts are ridiculous, it seems. And who keeps
that's
winning
another
these
thing.
contracts?
Right. And that goes back to full circle around is F what is being said about giving all the savings to the DOD. How about we freeze all the budgets until he can pay us an audit,
Right.
and then we'll start looking at potential contracts and seeing who exactly can provide the most value in these contracts if we have to if we essentially have to issue a bunch of contracts. And there is no such thing as a no bid contract,
Right.
right?
Right.
Dick
Right.
Cheney, Halliburton. There
Right.
is no
Right.
such thing as a no bid contract. I want to see essentially 1,000 pages on what I get for my money.
Right.
And right,
Exactly. That would fall in line with the earlier movements of what Trump was doing with Doge. He would go in these
yeah,
Doge would go in these organizations and just be like, "Look at where all this money, and it's just ridiculous." All right, let's talk about a better cabinet appointment. Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury.
yeah,
I saw a clip where he's trying to explain to the great Maxine Walters that Doge are actually agents of the Secretary of Treasury. They're not random, unappointed people. They are agents of the Department of Treasury. It also seems that he has secured a trade agreement with China, and there's been quite the trade war
yeah.
going on. U.S. tariffs have been as high as 145%. China countered with 125%. And it seemed like over the weekend there was a really good meeting, and we might actually have a really good U.S. and China trade agreement. And I'm looking forward to the market's reaction if this comes
Well,
true.
and so what I will say is he's very controlled. Scott is
Yes.
very controlled. He is somewhat quiet, and he appears to be producing things behind the scenes. Now, what I will say is that from the perspective of which I think we've covered before, cutting interest rates, which
Yes.
I'm not sure that has really been a driver of President Trump,
Yes.
opposed to
Besson.
Scott Besson. The thought is that we don't need any more inflation. Thank you. I really don't care
No.
if you save the commercial real estate sector in this country. Sorry, boys, but
Mm,
you know what? You'll have to figure out how you're going to refinance that building at a higher rate,
yeah.
like everybody else, like every other
Yeah.
American.
Yeah. Welcome to America.
Welcome to America, and and from that aspect, I can't believe I'm saying I agree with the Fed, but I do agree with the Fed. We don't
I
need an
have been
interest rate
too.
cut at this point in time, and I don't believe uh, uh, Scott has been in the forefront calling for that. That's more Ben the Don calling for that.
Right. Oh,
So,
yeah. 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 Yeah.
and I don't think that he has started. And this is a little bit away from where you originally started on, but I actually heard something that said somebody else, another president in the 20s, and I can't recall who. It might have been Truman. It wasn't in the 20s. It might have been Truman, that he created a big riff with the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And so he did
Mm,
get that guy to resign, but the guy would not resign from being on the board of the Federal Reserve. And he
right.
made
Right. On the
Truman's
board.
life miserable for
Ah,
his entire term.
right.
So that
Yes.
same scenario could occur. So be really careful about, unless you're
Yes.
planning on ending the Fed, which I would uh, be all good with. Go give Ron Paul a call.
Right.
The bottom
Right.
line,
Right.
unless you're going down that path, I would essentially say be careful, because you could get that Truman esque event where Jerry ends up
Right.
on the
Right.
board
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the
I'll just
Federal
step down,
Reserve
but I'll be on the
throughout
board.
your entire term and
Right.
does everything to make your life miserable.
Yeah.
So let's be smart about this. And besides
Mr.
the way,
Deeds.
we don't need any more inflation. We do
No.
not need any more inflation.
All right. Please. No more. Very good. Yeah, history repeats. Let's go down to Pam Bondi. She is the U.S. Attorney General. Here's a fact: largest seizure of fentanyl in the history of the world under the Pam Bondi regime is, I think, her only claim to fame. We've heard talks of opening the Epstein files, nothing. We've heard talks of opening the JFK files, nothing. We've heard talks of opening the Martin Luther King files, nothing.
How
What
about,
do you think, Miss
yeah,
Bondi?
yeah, yeah. And I don't even think those are not even the top of my list. So, from the Epstein perspective, I don't need to see the files. Start arresting people. You got
Right.
people's names in those files.
Yes.
Go kick their doors in. And
Everyone's
I,
seen the
I
names.
don't need the details, but I know there are some names that have been publicly expressed. They
Yes.
haven't had their doors kicked in. So what's up with that? I don't need to see the files. You don't need to proof the files. I don't want to see the videos. Go kick some people's doors in. We know names that are on that list. Why have you not done that? Why have
Right.
you not done that? And the bigger list is, I would very much like to see the 9/11 investigations reopened
Right.
again. How about that? And let's see. So who killed Martin Luther King? Who killed JFK? I really don't care. I could guess who that is, and they're all dead. So the bottom
Yeah.
line is not even relevant. I don't care anymore. It's so irrelevant. I don't care. 9
Right.
11, there are still people alive that
Oh,
made
yeah.
really bad decisions about that scenario,
Yes.
and I'd like to see them pay the price. And so, and anybody involved with Epstein, send your agents to conduct a raid on their house and put them in cuffs, and we'll watch it on the news. Okay? That's that is what an actionable item is all about, right?
Right. the other thing too is Doge's findings look like some, especially the USA, people were committing crimes that ought to be prosecuted.
Again, right. That's another one. That's even is more relevant, even more relevant. I was committing a crime up until yesterday, and you have
Right.
done nothing. And,
Right.
it's like $2 billion went into my fund, and I did not provide a single unit of housing to somebody that I promised that I was going to help. And how is this person not being rated? How is this
Right.
person not being rated?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like the early Doge findings bordered on criminal activity that should have been prosecuted, and nothing.
Absolutely.
You didn't hear anything.
Right. That's a great point, John.
And
That's
I've heard stuff like, "Oh, we'll eventually go after them." I was like,
there is no
"Why not
eventually.
today?"
There is no eventually. If you wanted to actually prosecute somebody, you kick in their door and cuff them now, right?
Yeah,
It's
and
ridiculous.
it's funny. What was it? I mean,
So I did not want to go down the grading path, but since you have brought up what the administration is doing under the rule of law right now, F,
right,
you
right.
get an F,
And
and
what I find unbelievable is, Giuliani and Spitzer, when they were in New York holding pretty much the same
yeah,
position, man, they were going after folks.
that yeah,
I mean, they were going, especially Spitzer.
well, and so from that aspect, Rudy breaking the mob.
Right.
Talk about dangerous. There was
Yeah,
some
in New
danger
York.
involved in doing that, and
And
I
he did it in New
guess
York, not
amazing
Oklahoma,
that Rudy is still
folks.
alive. So God bless him, and
Right.
and in the aspect, and he paid the price. He has paid the price,
Yes.
and got nothing in return. And so again, God bless Rudy Giuliani. The bottom line is done tons for this country and got nothing but sand kicked in his face after being involved with the Trump administration version 1, season 1. And so the bottom
Right.
line is that that's a sad story. um, um, from that aspect, I would be convinced that Rudy would actually be arresting people at this point
Oh,
in
yeah.
time,
Oh,
and
yeah.
there should be tons of them, tons of them.
Right.
And so you have, so we were talking about fires burning. You have so many
Yep.
fires burning, and we're not getting any action on any of these major fires. It's disappointing, and I'm almost wondering if season 2 is not going to be the exact same thing as season 1, which is highly disappointing, you know. So
Right.
I will say some positive things, not about, I mean, you covered Rubio, but I will just cover President Trump himself. As for wars, as for stopping wars, he gets an A. He gets an A
Right.
plus. I will say that. So there's a pat on the back of negotiating between India and Pakistan, who both have nuclear weapons and could have lit up the Middle East like a Christmas tree. And so that's fabulous. And as for putting pressure on both uh, Zelensky and
Putin.
Putin to make peace. That
Yes.
is great. And I think Putin probably wanted peace anyway. He seems like a fair enough person. Everybody's got skeletons in their closet, so I'm not endorsing everything that he's ever done. He was part of the KGB at one time. The bottom line is that, but in that aspect, I think he legitimately wanted peace. Um, uh,
Yes.
so it, I will give an A where an A is due. We have
He's even tried to
stomping
end
out
this Israel
war all over
Hamas.
the place. So globally, our policies have looked really good. So
Yes.
okay, that being away from season one of The Apprentice, the White House Apprentice, being different than season one. Season two is doing well on global affairs. I must admit, I have to say that, and I guess you can't have your foot in every door. But the bottom line is that domestically, internally, not other than RFK, what RFK Jr. is doing, pretty unimpressed, man. Pretty unimpressive. Not much going on here, man.
I think it's been a, I would grade him pretty, I'd grade him an A on immigration. I mean, compared to Biden, I mean, he has reversed everything Biden did. People aren't coming over the border anymore now that he's in charge. And the exact opposite, he's deporting people too. Now, again,
Well,
to your point earlier, his deportation strategy at first seemed great because it seemed like priority number one's the criminals. I don't care about anybody else. Priority one's the criminals. I'm going after criminals. Great. Now it seems off the rails a bit as far as deportation goes. But you've got to admit, there aren't illegals coming across the border
well,
anymore like
and
wildfire
and
under the
and
Biden
so here is
administration.
what I will say about that, John. Too. Okay, we have a border wall, and I love essentially our border patrol, and that's great that ICE is potentially arresting some very hardcore criminals, and that
Yes.
is life threatening. I mean, you're going up against a gang, and so let's hope they continue that. Those people are brave people because you could get your head blown
Yes.
off. That's
Yes.
absolutely true. So we
Yep.
need more of that. We need more brave people like that and rounding up gangs. But so Musk closed down USAID. How much of that immigration was actually encouraged by USAID
Mm.
paying people to
Mm.
come here, paying people to come here. That almost had to be a crime in itself. So there's another one into domestic law enforcement. How is that not being investigated? The
Right.
government the government employee that allocated money via USAID to a foundation that was committing a foundation or a NGO who was committing illegal activity by bringing by breaking the law and bringing people to this country. So who in the government was in charge of dispersing that money, and who did the
Right.
money get dispersed to that took government money to commit crimes? I want
Right.
to. I want the heads of those foundations. I want their doors kicked in. I want
Right.
them in cuffs, right? I want the government employees that were involved in that fired. And
Right. Well, they've
if
been
they knowingly were doing this, I want their doors kicked in and I want them arrested.
right.
So the
Right.
bottom line is that where is any of this stuff happening? Where is that? This is presumably what Mega was all about,
Right.
man.
Right.
You
This was
know,
the mandate.
in my mind, and I'm not. I honestly think the Mega platform came from Ron Paul's 2012 run,
Right.
which
Right.
would have stopped a lot of this stuff before it ever happened. But the bottom line is that we want real results. We want
Yes.
criminals. And,
Yes.
and it's as simple as this. I want criminals locked up,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You
Or
know,
deported.
it really is as simple as that.
Right. 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 So I think, to your point, I think the firings have happened. There's been no prosecutions. And that's
Right.
the
Yeah,
wild
yeah.
thing. I
Where
mean,
is this
these
going?
sound like crimes. I mean,
Right.
at the least,
Exactly.
it's fraud. I mean, at the very least, it's fraud.
You're
I
right.
mean,
Exactly.
it just seems like massive amounts of fraud were committed. That is a crime, folks.
Right. Exactly.
That's a prosecutable crime.
Yeah. And so if it is fraud, and I am not a lawyer, and I do not play one on TV. But
Neither do I.
the bottom line, yeah, thank God for that. But the bottom line is that across state fraud,
Is a
money
federal crime.
used to a knowingly commit a crime, isn't that called racketeering?
Right. It's a
Isn't
federal
that called
crime and it's across
racketeering?
state
The
lines.
bottom
Right.
line is that's a pretty major crime. I
Yes,
think
yes.
people should be being arrested.
Right. Exactly. You mentioned before about global policy. Let's talk about the tariffs. So, in my mind, some of the global policies have involved the tariffs. Uh, I think the tariffs have been going pretty good. I mean,
Shockingly, that Trump gets a feather in his cap. I was concerned about creating inflation, more inflation with those tariffs. And it appears like the Don and Scott and whoever else is negotiating these things actually have this stuff under control. And that's great news. Hats off.
right,
I'll give you an A
right.
where an A is due.
Yes.
Hats off.
Yep. Yep. The other thing I think the whole thing was, I think it was a shock to the system. And I think the goal was to make a deal. It was, it's like here they are, and Vietnam and some of these other countries just ran to the table, and I was like, all right, we can't deal with that tariff. And we've
Well,
been unfair in the past. That's the other thing, though, is like these were half of the tariffs that they were doing to us.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right. Exactly. And I will say, I think I said in a previous podcast, we we have we have done very well with our dealings in with Vietnam related to tariffs because I think those folks really want to do business with America, and I think those folks are legitimate, and I think they deserve an opportunity after 50 years to
Right,
be preferred trade status and
right,
do business with us. I honestly think it's a legitimate country, and there is probably somewhat limited corruption there. I am also, absolutely fine with Japan, South Korea makes
right,
quality
right.
stuff, all kinds of stuff like that. You know, and we're negotiating with China. We get a lot of stuff with China. I am not a
Oh
fan
yeah,
of the government in China,
no,
and I'm sure this podcast is banned in China and Hong Kong.
probably.
However, the bottom line is that the people of there's lots of people in China, and I think they're probably fine people. So,
Right. Yep.
the fact that you have a small percentage of the population uh, controlling the government via the military is very unfortunate. So,
Yep. Yep.
but back to the trade policies as a whole, little bit skeptical at first. It seems like
Me
it's
too.
worked out. And the reason I was skeptical is the aspect of this country does not need any more inflation. We do not
No,
need any more inflation.
no.
So, failed trade policy or lowering interest rates creating inflation doesn't appear to be all that smart. But
Right, right,
wow,
right.
at least one of those two seems to be panning out. I
Yes,
will admit, hats off to
yes.
President Trump and for making that happen.
All right. That's all I got for this podcast. I'll run down some stuff. You can reach us via email at onefortheroadpodcast@gmail.com. Our soon to be constructed website is onefortheroad.net. We are on 3 audio platforms. Those would be rss.com, Podbean, and Spotify. And of course, you can get us on YouTube. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube. For C Squared, this is Mr. K. Have a great week, folks. Thanks
Thanks
for
for
listening.
tuning in. As always, folks, have a good one.
Have a good one.